The solar system was still in its natural rhythm when the first anomaly appeared. At first, it was a mere flicker on the radar, nothing more than a fleeting distortion at the edge of Earth's monitoring systems. But within hours, the anomaly grew, expanding and becoming undeniable. A fleet, vast and silent, emerged from the depths of space, their ships more advanced than anything humanity had ever seen. They moved with calculated precision, as if no force in the galaxy could challenge them. The Nixari, the name humanity would come to dread, arrived with no demands, no communication, just an overwhelming, unblinking presence. The ships, massive and sleek, lingered in the outer edges of the solar system, too far for Earth's weaponry to reach, yet too close for comfort. Their designs were elegant, almost biological, as though they had grown organically rather than being forged by hands. These were no ordinary invaders, no bloodthirsty conquerors. They did not engage in any aggression, yet their mere presence instilled a deep, gnawing fear in the hearts of every living soul on Earth. The world's governments scrambled for answers. Astronomical observatories tracked the fleet's slow, deliberate advance toward the inner planets. In military bunkers and strategic command centers, scientists and analysts pored over data, trying to make sense of the Nixari's motives. Why were they here? What did they want? The silence was deafening, far more terrifying than any war cry. The Nixari simply watched. The UN held an emergency session, with leaders from every nation gathered to discuss the threat. Tensions ran high, and division was inevitable. Some believed the Nixari were waiting for humanity to strike first, a silent game of chicken, while others argued they were waiting to test humanity's resolve, to see how Earth would respond to the unknown. But one thing was clear: fear was spreading. The longer the Nixari remained, the more paralyzed the world became. In the midst of this confusion, Dr. Elizabeth Kirev, a renowned philosopher and theorist, proposed a radical theory. Perhaps this is not an invasion, she argued in a televised speech. Perhaps this is a test, not of our weapons, but of our spirit. These aliens are not here to destroy us. They are here to see if we can rise above our fear. They want to see if we believe we deserve to survive. Her words were met with skepticism, even ridicule. How could belief in something abstract like self-worth possibly hold off an alien threat? The military leaders, hardened by decades of global conflict, dismissed her theory as naive, even dangerous. Yet Dr. Kirev's words resonated with a portion of the population, those tired of the endless wars, those who had seen humanity at its lowest. They saw in her message something more than just hope. They saw a call to arms of a different kind. And so, as Earth's governments debated and prepared for war, something else began to stir: a quiet, unseen movement. People across the world began to look inward, reflecting on their shared humanity, their common belief that they could overcome any challenge. Acts of kindness, solidarity, and unity began to spread. It wasn't much, but it was enough to spark the question: could belief itself be the key to their survival? In every corner of the Earth, from crowded city streets to remote villages, humans quietly turned their gaze toward the stars. The Nixari had not spoken, and that was the most dangerous part, because they were giving humanity the space to decide. Would they rise to the challenge or succumb to fear? Only time would tell, but the first signs were unmistakable. Earth had just begun to realize that this would not be a war of weapons, but a war of will. As the weeks passed, the silent presence of the Nixari fleet grew more oppressive. They did not attack, nor did they leave. They hovered in the void, distant enough to remain beyond the reach of Earth's military forces, but close enough to make their power known. Their mere existence was a constant, nagging reminder of humanity's vulnerability. Fear took root in every corner of the globe, and soon a sense of dread began to cloud human thought. Then the first crisis struck. It started with the sun. A sudden burst of strange solar activity, unexpected flares that sent shockwaves of electromagnetic radiation across the solar system disrupted Earth's communications and navigation systems. The sun, which had always been a steady beacon of life, now seemed erratic, almost malevolent in its unpredictability. The flares continued, each one stronger than the last, sending ripples of chaos through Earth's infrastructure. Satellites malfunctioned, communication networks faltered, and global financial systems went haywire. Panic spread as people could no longer trust the signals from their devices, unable to connect to family or business, even as the world's power grids began to flicker and fail. Just as quickly as the solar storms had begun, they abruptly stopped, leaving Earth reeling in confusion and fear. But that was only the beginning. Weeks later, a second wave of terror arrived, as humanity began to notice something far more unsettling. The ocean currents began to shift. Temperatures across the planet began to fluctuate unnaturally, and strange seismic activities rocked regions previously thought to be stable. Earthquakes rumbled beneath cities that had never felt tremors before. Tsunamis battered coastal areas, displacing millions. Hurricanes and tornadoes erupted without warning, far outside the typical seasons. The climate had become erratic, as if nature itself was being twisted, manipulated by an unseen hand. The Nixery's influence was unmistakable. Earth's governments scrambled to contain the damage, but the global infrastructure was crumbling under the weight of these disasters. Every country, every city was on edge, and the fear that had once been whispered in corners now roared in every home. The world was changing, and humanity was struggling to keep up. And through it all, the Nixery remained silent, their ships still hovering in the distant dark, watching, waiting. In the chaos, Dr. Kirev's voice once again rose above the noise, offering a different perspective. Her theory, once dismissed as naive, was now gaining unexpected followers. "This is not an act of warfare," she said in a broadcast that reached millions. "The Nixery are not trying to destroy us. They are testing our resolve. They are trying to see if we will break, if we will collapse under the weight of our fear." Her words were a spark in a darkened world. A quiet group of followers began to form around her message. Not soldiers, but thinkers, spiritual leaders, and ordinary people tired of the endless cycles of war and terror. They started to hold gatherings, small at first, in which they would meditate on the power of unity, the strength of the human spirit. They spoke of belief, not in abstract, religious terms, but in the belief that humanity, for all its faults and fears, was capable of rising above its worst impulses. That belief was their greatest weapon. Yet, for many, Dr. Kirev's message fell on deaf ears. The majority of the world's population still demanded action, swift and aggressive. Military leaders rallied, ready to launch preemptive strikes, to meet the Nixery with force. Humanity's response was torn in two: fight or believe. The first real test came when a newly formed alliance of nations prepared for an offensive. An enormous fleet was dispatched, aimed at confronting the Nixery, determined to show them that humanity would not be cowed. But just before the fleet left Earth's orbit, another catastrophe struck, this time on a scale that could not be ignored. The Nixery unleashed a powerful electromagnetic pulse, an energy wave so strong that it disabled Earth's entire satellite network, plunging the planet into darkness. Communication ceased, air travel was grounded, and navigation systems failed. The world was blind. No one could see the Nixery's movements, and the crisis deepened. In that moment, Dr. Kirev's message was suddenly relevant. "We have nothing left but our belief," she urged. "It is the only thing they cannot take from us." But could belief truly withstand the weight of this growing catastrophe? The silent question loomed over the earth. Doubt was creeping in, and it was becoming harder to remember what they were fighting for. But somewhere, in the midst of the devastation, there was a flicker of hope. For the first time in weeks, the seeds of unity began to sprout, not in the halls of government or in military command centers, but in the hearts of ordinary people. The weeks that followed the electromagnetic pulse felt like a waking nightmare for Earth. The planet was plunged into disarray. With the communication systems down, entire regions were cut off from the rest of the world. Governments struggled to maintain order as they faced the combined devastation of global natural disasters and technological collapse. Cities that once thrived on the pulse of data and global networks were now isolated, stumbling in the dark. Yet, amid the chaos, there was a glimmer of something unexpected. Humanity's greatest asset, its adaptability, was beginning to show. Small, localized communities banded together, pooling resources and knowledge in ways they had never done before. Dr. Elizabeth Karev's message began to resonate more deeply. In the absence of technology, people turned inward, questioning not just the nature of the alien threat, but the essence of their own survival. Could they endure this without surrendering to despair? And then the signal came. At first, it was barely detectable, just a faint, encrypted transmission flickering across the damaged remnants of Earth's communication grid. Some dismissed it as a glitch, another product of the solar storms. But to those few who had been following Dr. Karev's philosophy of belief, it was something more. It felt like a message, one that carried the unmistakable mark of the Nixury, a hidden thread woven through the shattered fabric of Earth's fractured communication systems. Dr. Karev was the first to decode it. "We test your conviction, not your arms," the message read. The meaning of those words hit her like a bolt of lightning. The Nixury weren't here to conquer. They were here to assess, to judge. They weren't interested in destroying humanity through brute force, but through the erosion of belief, the destruction of will. Her discovery was a revelation. The Nixury had never intended to invade. They had arrived to see how far humanity would bend under the weight of fear and doubt. The pulse that had crippled Earth's systems was not a weapon of destruction, but a test. They were watching, waiting to see if Earth would fracture under the pressure of uncertainty. When Dr. Karev shared her findings, the response was mixed. Many still believed the Nixury were simply waiting for humanity to make the first move, to give them a reason to strike. But a growing group of thinkers, artists, and spiritual leaders embraced the idea that Earth's real battle was internal. They had been given a choice, not to destroy the invaders, but to transcend the fear that the Nixury were manipulating. As the days wore on, Earth's people began to experiment with this new mindset. The world had already seen the power of fear. Now, they would see if belief could be as powerful. Communities that had once been divided by political lines and ideologies began to unite under a single cause: survival through solidarity, survival through belief. The world's great cities held quiet vigils, offering prayers, meditation, and music, acts of unity, not aggression. The message that belief, rather than firepower, was humanity's true strength began to spread like wildfire. One morning, a large group of scientists and philosophers, guided by Dr. Karev's philosophy, unveiled something extraordinary, a new form of collective consciousness. Using a combination of rudimentary technology and human willpower, they created a rudimentary belief network, a global channel for amplifying humanity's shared conviction. It was a crude system, but it worked. With it, they could focus their collective belief and energy into a shared force. The movement grew. In every corner of Earth, small pockets of people began to gather, contributing their energy and belief to the network. Even in the most isolated corners of the globe, there were whispers of this new resistance. Earth was beginning to answer the Nixury, not with weapons, but with the power of unity. It wasn't enough to defeat the Nixury yet, but it was enough to make them take notice. And take notice they did. The Nixury fleet, which had once been a silent observer, now began to make subtle movements. It wasn't aggression, at least not yet, but the Nixury were adapting, reacting to Earth's new strength, and for the first time, humanity had a sense of control. They weren't just reacting to the Nixery's manipulation, they were shaping their own destiny. It was a small victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. And as the first ripples of belief spread, humanity realized something profound. The battle was not against the Nixery fleet. It was against the belief that they couldn't win. The war for survival was just beginning, and the first step had already been taken. The Nixery, silent and omnipresent, had never shown their full hand. The message they had sent was an enigma, their fleet merely a shadow on the horizon. Yet as Earth's collective belief began to take shape, an insidious force was unleashed from the depths of the Nixery ships, a force that was not technological but psychological. The true battle had only just begun. The first of the Nixery's attacks came not in the form of physical weapons, but through the mind. Across the globe, people began to experience vivid, terrifying hallucinations. Entire cities saw their streets crumble before their eyes, towering buildings reduced to dust. Others saw their families disappear, replaced by faceless, soulless husks. The illusions were everywhere, deep, vivid nightmares that seemed to bleed into reality itself. No one was safe. Dr. Karev, watching in horror as these psychological attacks tore through Earth's populations, quickly deduced the nature of the assault. The Nixery had found a way to manipulate the human mind, amplifying doubts and fears to paralyze humanity's belief. They were not interested in destroying Earth physically, they sought to break the human spirit. The true weapon the Nixery wielded was the ability to induce despair, to make humans believe that survival was impossible, that their unity was a fleeting illusion. But where others saw only fear, Dr. Karev saw an opportunity. She knew that for the Nixery to succeed, humanity had to collapse into itself, to fracture under the weight of fear and doubt. And yet, despite the horrors the world was witnessing, something remarkable began to happen. The attacks, while devastating, also sparked a counter-movement, a surge of resistance. People banded together, not to fight back with violence, but with unity. If the Nixery sought to divide, then humanity's answer would be to unite. Across the globe, individuals began to tap into their collective energy, finding strength in each other. Communities of believers grew, sharing their thoughts, their hopes, their defiance in the face of the Nixery's mental onslaught. Small acts of solidarity became acts of resistance. In the heart of war-torn cities, children continued to play, their laughter reverberating through the rubble. In the silent forests, families lit candles together, reaffirming their connection to one another. Everywhere, Earth's people clung to the simplest truths, that they could stand together, that they could face anything. Even as the hallucinations became more intense, fears manifesting into grotesque visions of societal collapse, environmental devastation, and personal loss, the collective will of humanity began to fight back. Through the belief network, a kind of spiritual radar, humanity focused its energy on defying the illusions, pouring belief back into the world, using the force of hope as a shield against the encroaching darkness. The Nixery, for the first time, were forced to adapt. The more they amplified their psychic manipulations, the more humanity resisted. The power of belief was growing stronger, and the illusions began to falter. The collective consciousness of Earth had become a living, breathing entity. People were no longer simply surviving, they were healing. A momentous event happened one evening when a mass gathering in Tokyo, designed to be another symbol of resistance, reached an unprecedented level of belief. Thousands stood together, holding hands, their collective focus unwavering. The air shimmered with a strange energy, and for the briefest moment, the Nixery's influence was completely dispelled. The illusions that had once seemed so real faded into nothingness, and the people of Earth saw the truth for the first time. They were not at the mercy of the Nixery. They were in control. The Nixery fleet, while still present, appeared to hesitate. Their psychic weapons, which had once been so effective, were now encountering something they had never expected: the sheer resilience of the human spirit. Earth had not only fought back, it had begun to understand its true power. For the Nixari, this was a turning point. They had hoped to break humanity by forcing them to confront their deepest fears, but instead, they had unlocked a power they did not understand. The true battle was no longer a war of technology, but a war of belief, and humanity had just begun to grasp that its greatest weapon was not its technology, nor its military strength, but the indomitable force of its collective will. The Nixari fleet, silent once more, watched, waiting for the next move. But humanity had already made its choice, and that, perhaps, was the greatest victory of all. For the first time since the Nixari had arrived, Earth's people felt a shift, a subtle, yet unmistakable change in the air. The illusions that had once threatened to undo humanity's spirit were now fading. The attacks had lost their potency, their hold on the collective psyche weakening. But even as the forces of fear receded, something else began to grow, an energy, a force, unlike anything Earth had ever experienced. Dr. Karev stood at the forefront of this new movement. She had seen the shift firsthand, felt the change in the atmosphere as Earth's collective belief began to crystallize into something tangible. The belief network, which had once been a fledgling idea, was now a beacon of hope. People from every corner of the world were connecting, scientists, philosophers, artists, and ordinary citizens, joining together to reinforce humanity's will to survive. What had begun as a simple exercise in defiance had evolved into a spiritual and emotional force that transcended individual fears. The Nixari, though still distant and silent, were no longer the omnipotent force they once appeared to be. Their psychic weapons, which had once torn through Earth's defenses with ease, were now struggling to penetrate the collective shield humanity had built. It was as if the sheer weight of belief had turned the tide, repelling the attacks and forcing the Nixari to rethink their strategy. In the quiet of her lab, Dr. Karev sat in front of her screen, watching the global network of belief grow. It was as if a new kind of energy was coursing through the planet, an energy that was not powered by technology or science, but by something deeper, something older. Human consciousness, collective will, and shared conviction had become Earth's most powerful weapon. And then, something extraordinary happened. The Nixari fleet, which had been hovering in orbit, began to move. Slowly at first, then with increasing speed, they advanced. But they were not approaching Earth with aggression. Instead, they were aligning in a formation that seemed almost ceremonial. Their ships, once distant and threatening, now appeared to be in harmony, as if responding to the rising energy from Earth. Dr. Karev's heart raced. Was this the beginning of an invasion, or had the Nixari finally understood the truth? Were they now acknowledging humanity's newfound strength, or were they about to strike with unimaginable force? The moment of clarity came when a single Nixari vessel broke away from the formation and descended toward Earth. It did not fire weapons, nor did it make any aggressive moves. It was a peaceful descent, but the tension in the air was palpable. Humanity held its collective breath. The ship landed in the heart of Africa, just outside the city of Nairobi. Within moments, a massive crowd gathered, their eyes fixed on the strange, shimmering craft. Fear had given way to curiosity and anticipation. People gathered, unsure of what to expect, but their belief, what they had come to call their collective will, had forged a new strength in them. They were no longer the scared, divided people they had once been. They were a united force, ready to face whatever came next. Dr. Karev was among the first to arrive, standing at the front of the crowd. She felt a deep sense of purpose, an unshakable conviction that this moment was the turning point. The Nixari had not come to destroy Earth, they had come to see if humanity could overcome its greatest challenge, its own doubts, fears, and insecurities. The ship's hatch opened slowly, and from within, a single figure emerged. The being was tall and ethereal, its features difficult to define, its presence otherworldly. But there was no aggression in its posture. It stood in silence, observing the crowd as if studying them. And then, in a voice that seemed to resonate within the minds of all those present, the figure spoke. "We have tested you, humanity. We have seen your darkness, your fear. But we have also seen your light, your unwavering belief. You have passed the trial." The words reverberated through the crowd, and a collective murmur of disbelief spread across the people. The Nixari were not invaders. They were not conquerors. They were something else, a species that had been sent to test Earth's people, to see if humanity could rise above the chaos it had wrought on itself. Dr. Karev, her heart pounding with the weight of the revelation, stepped forward. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice steady but filled with awe. The Nixari figure's response was simple. "Now you are free to choose. Your fate is in your hands." In that moment, Earth's future was no longer determined by the might of weapons or the terror of invasion. It was determined by the strength of humanity's belief, and the belief that they could shape their own destiny. The war was over, not because Earth had defeated the Nixari, but because humanity had proven that it could rise above its darkest instincts. The trials were over, and the true battle had been won. The air around the gathered crowd crackled with a kind of electricity, silent yet all-encompassing. People stood at the foot of the Nixari craft, still processing the weight of the alien's words. "You have passed the trial." Those 5 simple words seemed to hold more power than any weapon could. It was as though the very foundation of their existence had shifted. Dr. Karev, standing among the crowd, felt her pulse race. This was the moment she had predicted, but the implications were far more profound than she had anticipated. Humanity had done something the Nixari had not expected. They had not broken. They had not succumbed to fear or despair. They had come together as one, their belief stronger than any force the Nixari could summon. As the alien figure's gaze swept across the crowd, a quiet murmur of understanding spread. The moment was heavy with anticipation. What did freedom to choose mean? The Nixari had made it clear that Earth was no longer under threat, but the true test was not over. Humanity now faced the greatest challenge of all. What would they do with their newfound freedom? Dr. Karev stepped forward, feeling an overwhelming responsibility. The alien being had extended an invitation, but it was a question humanity would need to answer on their own. How would they shape their future? Would they rebuild the broken world they had lived in, or would they embrace something new, something better? The Nixari figure spoke again, its voice a deep resonance within everyone's mind, not a sound, but a vibration that rippled through their very souls. "We have seen your strength, your conviction. We offer you knowledge, technology, and a place among the stars. But only if you are ready to abandon the old ways of destruction and division. Only if you choose unity over conflict, progress over stagnation, understanding over fear." A wave of unease rippled through the crowd. The temptation was overwhelming. Earth had been ravaged by centuries of war, political strife, environmental collapse. The idea of taking the Nixari's offer, of receiving technology that could advance humanity far beyond its current capabilities, was alluring. The promise of peace and prosperity seemed just within reach, but was humanity truly ready for the responsibility that came with it? Dr. Karev could see the doubt in the eyes of many. It was one thing to survive, to win a battle of belief. It was another to rise to the challenge of transformation. The Nixari were offering humanity the chance to evolve, but it would require a profound shift in how Earth's people saw themselves, how they interacted with each other, and how they viewed their place in the universe. She raised her hand, drawing the crowd's attention. "We stand on the edge of a precipice," she said, her voice steady but full of the weight of the moment. "The Nixari have given us a choice, one that will shape our future, but this is not a gift. It is a test, just as much as the trials we've already endured. Will we use this knowledge to create a world of harmony, or will we fall into the same patterns of greed, violence, and division that have marked our history? This is our moment to rise above." The Nixery being did not speak again, but its presence seemed to weigh heavily on the crowd, as if waiting for them to make their decision. And then, as the crowd held its collective breath, something remarkable happened. A young girl, no older than 12, stepped forward. She was small, frail, but her eyes were wide with determination. She held something in her hand, a simple, worn-out notebook. She raised it high, as though offering it to the alien. "I believe in us," she said, her voice clear and unwavering. "I believe that we can choose better. We've been given a chance to change, and I choose to believe that we will. I choose to believe in humanity." The crowd was silent for a moment, struck by the simplicity and power of her words, and then, as if in answer to her call, others began to step forward. One by one, they spoke, not with grand proclamations, but with simple, heartfelt declarations. Some spoke of family, of community. Others spoke of healing the earth, of breaking down the walls that had divided them. Together, their voices became a chorus of unity, a testament to the strength they had found within themselves. Dr. Karev watched in awe as the crowd's collective belief surged, filling the air with energy. The alien figure remained still, its gaze fixed on the people below, observing their decision. And then, without a word, it nodded. A subtle gesture, but one that carried the weight of centuries of observation, of testing. "You have chosen," it said, the words resonating deeply within every heart. "You have chosen to evolve, to transcend." The craft's engines hummed to life, not with the roar of propulsion, but with the soft, almost melodic sound of harmony. The Nixery ship slowly ascended, its presence no longer a looming threat, but a symbol of what humanity had achieved. As the ship disappeared into the sky, leaving Earth's atmosphere behind, humanity stood united, no longer divided by fear, but strengthened by belief. They had faced the darkest forces of their own nature and had emerged stronger, wiser. The road ahead would not be easy, but for the first time in their history, humanity was ready to shape their own future, not with the weapons of destruction, but with the power of unity and conviction. The true journey had just begun. As the Nixery ship vanished into the heavens, a profound silence settled over the crowd. For a moment, no one moved. It was as if time itself had paused, holding its breath in the wake of humanity's decision. The sky above, once filled with the ominous shadow of alien ships, now seemed clearer, brighter. The weight of fear that had gripped Earth for so long had finally lifted, replaced by a fragile but undeniable sense of hope. Dr. Karev stood at the front of the crowd, her mind still racing. The Nixery had given Earth a chance, an opportunity to prove that they were more than just survivors, more than the fractured, violent species they had once been. The decision to accept that challenge was not just a victory, it was a responsibility. Humanity had chosen the path of unity, but the real work, the real transformation, was only just beginning. The first days after the Nixery left were marked by an outpouring of collaboration. Governments, once fragmented and in constant conflict, now found themselves compelled to work together. Old borders and rivalries that had once seemed insurmountable began to soften. The rebuilding of Earth, both in physical and social terms, became the focal point of a global effort. People from every corner of the world came together to address the crisis that had once seemed too overwhelming to fix. Dr. Karev spent every waking moment in communication with leaders, scientists, and philosophers, all of them working toward the same goal: to create a future where humanity could thrive without the shadow of war, without the temptation of destruction. The knowledge the Nixery had offered was vast, and the potential was limitless, but it came with one stipulation: humanity would need to prove that they could handle it, that they could evolve beyond the errors of their past. The first test came sooner than anyone expected. In a remote part of the world, a group of nations that had long been at war began to experience a strange occurrence. The new technology and knowledge provided by the Nixery had been integrated into their systems, but something was happening. The machines designed to monitor resources and infrastructure began to act erratically. It was a subtle disruption at first, a misalignment of data, an occasional glitch in the algorithms. But soon it became clear that something was very wrong. Dr. Karev was called in to investigate. As she and her team worked to trace the source of the anomalies, they discovered that the problem was not with the technology itself, but with the way it was being used. The resources meant for communal benefit were being hoarded by a select few old power structures and elites who had quietly resumed their hold on the reins of control. In the heart of this new world, old habits had resurfaced. The temptation of power, of taking more than one's fair share, was proving to be just as dangerous as it had ever been. Dr. Karev knew that this was the test humanity had to face, the test of governance. The power the Nixari had shared was not just a gift, it was a mirror. It reflected humanity's weaknesses just as much as it magnified its strengths. The alien race had known this all along. They had given humanity the choice, but the true test was whether Earth's people could rise above the greed, the corruption, and the desire for control that had poisoned their past. Gathering the world's leaders and representatives, Dr. Karev called for a global summit. "We have been given an opportunity," she said, her voice steady but filled with urgency. "But with this opportunity comes the responsibility to ensure that power is shared equitably. We cannot fall into the old patterns of division and greed. The very future of humanity depends on our ability to work together, to share, and to build a society where no one is left behind." The summit, broadcast across the world, marked a pivotal moment in the history of Earth. Leaders from every nation gathered not as adversaries, but as equals focused on a singular purpose, ensuring that the gifts of the Nixari would be used for the greater good. The systems were restructured. Global resources were redistributed with the goal of healing the planet, addressing climate change, hunger, and inequality. The process was slow and fraught with challenges, but humanity had learned something crucial in the wake of the Nixari's trial. The true battle was not in defeating an external enemy, but in overcoming the internal ones, the divisions within society, the ingrained prejudices, the hunger for power. It was these forces that had once threatened to destroy Earth, and now it was these same forces that had to be dismantled if humanity was to move forward. Weeks passed, and the first signs of change were tangible. Environmental restoration projects, powered by the advanced technology, began to take root. Renewable energy was harnessed on a global scale, and the once polluted oceans began to show signs of life. Humanity was healing the planet, but it was also healing itself. Dr. Karev stood before a growing community of scientists and thinkers, all united by a single belief: that Earth's future would not be defined by the mistakes of the past, but by the choices they made now. "We have faced the test," she said, gazing out at the group, "and we have passed it. But we must never forget that this is just the beginning. Our journey is far from over. We are not just rebuilding a planet, we are rebuilding ourselves. And the path forward will be shaped by our ability to remember that we are all in this together." And so, as Earth continued its slow but steady recovery, humanity stood on the precipice of a new age, not one of conquest or destruction, but one of unity, growth, and understanding. The test was over, but the real journey had just begun. Months passed, and Earth, once teetering on the brink of collapse, began to show signs of profound transformation. The damage of centuries of war, environmental degradation, and division was not healed overnight, but the changes were undeniable. The cities once ravaged by conflict now pulsed with new life. The air was clearer, the oceans slowly recovering. Yet beyond the physical world, something deeper had shifted within humanity itself. The very fabric of Earth's society had been rewoven. Dr. Karev stood on the balcony of the newly rebuilt Global Summit headquarters in Geneva, looking out over the sprawling city below. What had once been a symbol of fractured power and political infighting was now a beacon of cooperation. Leaders from every corner of the Earth, once divided by borders, ideologies, and histories of conflict, now worked together with a singular focus to ensure that the mistakes of the past would never be repeated. The Nixery's offer had not been a cure-all, nor had it been without its challenges, but it had awakened something within humanity that no external force had ever been able to ignite. A shared understanding that survival, prosperity, and peace were not about domination or control, but about collaboration and trust. But even as Earth embraced this new way of thinking, there were those who struggled with the change. Old power structures, though weakened, were not easily dismantled. There were factions, groups with entrenched interests, who were reluctant to give up their influence. They clung to the old ways, where fear and power had governed. It was a constant battle to ensure that humanity's newfound unity wasn't undermined by the forces of greed and division. Dr. Karev knew that the road ahead would not be free from obstacles. The Nixery had tested humanity's spirit, but the true test was how Earth's people would handle the extraordinary power they had been given. The technologies, the knowledge, the energy, these were not just tools. They were responsibilities. Humanity had been offered a glimpse into the stars, into a future of untold potential, but it was up to them to decide whether they would use these gifts for good or allow them to become another source of conflict. The first opportunity to prove humanity's resolve came when a message arrived, this time not from the Nixari, but from another alien species. The message was encrypted, but the signal was unmistakable. A new challenge was on the horizon. The stars, it seemed, were not as distant as they once appeared. Humanity had become part of a larger cosmic community. As the news spread across the globe, a collective sense of anticipation filled the air. There were those who were fearful, unsure if humanity was truly ready to take its place among the stars. Yet others embraced the unknown, eager to extend the hand of peace and unity to the universe beyond. Dr. Karev was among those who saw this as the next step in humanity's evolution. The knowledge the Nixery had shared was more than just technological advancement. It was a philosophy, a new way of thinking. Earth's people had learned to overcome their fears, their greed, their divisions. Now, it was time to take that newfound wisdom into the cosmos. "We have come so far," Dr. Karev said during a global broadcast, addressing the people of Earth. "We have proven that we are capable of unity, that we are capable of peace. The question now is not whether we will meet the challenges ahead, but how. How will we reach out to the stars? How will we ensure that the mistakes of the past never follow us into the unknown?" Her words resonated across the globe. The people of Earth, though still learning, were no longer the fractured species they had once been. They were a collective, bound together not by fear, but by belief in each other, in their shared future, and in their ability to create a better world. In the following weeks, preparations began for humanity's first contact with the new species. Earth's leaders, scientists, diplomats, and philosophers were united in a single mission: to extend the same hand of peace and cooperation that had forged their unity on Earth to the unknown civilizations that lay beyond. And so, in the great halls of the new United Earth Council, representatives from every nation gathered, not as individuals, but as a collective. Together, they crafted a message, one of hope, of unity, and of the belief that humanity had evolved beyond the mistakes of its past. The message was sent not just to the stars, but to every corner of the universe that might be listening. The response, when it came, was not just a message. It was a presence, a connection. The stars themselves seemed to grow brighter, as if the universe itself was acknowledging humanity's place within it. For the first time, humanity understood that they were not alone. They had passed the test, not just of survival, but of evolution. They had risen above their fears and their divisions, and now they stood poised to join the greater community of the cosmos. The journey that began with a single act of belief had led Earth to a new dawn, one where unity, hope, and the power of belief would guide humanity into the future. It was not just the end of one story, but the beginning of a new chapter, one where humanity's place among the stars was no longer a distant dream, but a tangible reality. And as Earth's people looked to the stars, they knew that they were no longer simply a species struggling to survive. They were part of a much larger story, one that would stretch across the universe, driven by the belief that the greatest strength of all lay in the ability to unite.